네, 이사야서 10장 이어서 영어 성경, 일본어 성경입니다. 먼저 영어 성경입니다. Isaiah 10. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights, and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey, and robbing the fatherless. What will you do on the day of reckoning, when disaster comes from afar? To whom will you run for help? Where will you leave your riches? Nothing will remain but to cringe among the captives or fall among the slain. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. Woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath. I send him against the godless nation. I dispatch him against the people who anger me, to seize loot and snatch plunder, and to trample them down like mud in the streets. But this is not what he intends. This is not what he has in mind. His purpose is to destroy, to put an end to many nations. Are not my commanders all kings? He says. Has not Calno fared like Carchemish? Is not Hamath like Arpad, and Samaria like Damascus? As my hand sees the kingdoms of the idols, kingdoms whose images excelled those of Jerusalem and Samaria. Shall I not deal with Jerusalem and her images, as I dealt with Samaria and her idols? When the Lord has finished all his work against Mount Zion and Jerusalem, he will say, I will punish the king of Assyria for the willful pride of his heart and the haughty look in his eyes. For he says, by the strength of my hand I have done this, and by my wisdom, because I have understanding, I removed the boundaries of nations. I plundered their treasures. Like a mighty one, I subdued their kings. As one reaches into a nest, so my hand reached for the wealth of the nations. As men gather abandoned eggs, so I gathered all the countries. Not one flapped a wing, or opened its mouth to chirp. Does the axe raise itself above him who swings it, or the saw boast against him who uses it? As if a rod were to wield him who lifts it up, or a club brandish him who is not wood. Therefore, the Lord Almighty will send a wasting disease upon his sturdy warriors. Under his pump a fire will be kindled like a blazing flame. The light of Israel will become a fire, their Holy One a flame. In a single day it will burn and consume his thorns and his briars. The splendor of his forests and fertile fields it will completely destroy, as when a sick man wastes away. And the remaining trees of his forest will be so few that a child could write them down. In that day, the remnant of Israel, the survivors of the house of Jacob, will no longer rely on him, who struck them down, but will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return. A remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. Though your people, O Israel, be like the sand by the sea, only a remnant will return. Destruction has been decreed, overwhelming and righteous. The Lord Almighty will carry out the destruction decreed upon the whole land. Therefore, this is what the Lord Almighty says. O my people who live in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrians, who beat you with a rod and lift up a club against you, as Egypt did. Very soon my anger against you will end, and my wrath will be directed to their destruction. The Lord Almighty will rash them with a whip, as when he struck down Midian at the rock of Oreb. And he will raise his staff over the waters, as he did in Egypt. In that day, their burden will be lifted from your shoulders, their yoke from your neck. The yoke will be broken, because you have grown so fat. They enter Aiath. They pass through Migron. They store supplies at Michmash. They go over the pass and say, we will camp overnight at Jebah. Ramah trembles, Gibeah of Saul flees. Cry out, O daughter of Galim. Listen, O Laishah, poor Anathoth. Madmenah is in flight. The people of Gebim take cover. This day they will halt at Nob, and they will shake their feast at the mount of the daughter of Zion, at the hill of Jerusalem. See, the Lord Almighty will lop off the boughs with great power. The lofty trees will be felled. The tall ones will be brought low. He will cut down the forest thickets with an ox. Lebanon will fall before the mighty one. Amen. 네, 이어서 일본어 성경입니다. 이자야쇼, 다이주쇼. 와자와이다. 후기노 오키테오 세테이する者。不当な判決を書いている者たち。彼らは弱い者の訴えを退け、私の民のうちの貧しい者の権利をかすめる。こうしてやもめは彼らの餌食となり、みなし子たちは奪い取られる。訪れの日、遠くから嵐が来るときに、あなた方はどうするのか。誰に助けを求めて逃げ、どこに自分の栄光を残すのか。ただ、囚われ人の足元に膝をつき、殺された者たちのそばに倒れるだけだ。それでも身怒りは収まらず、なおもみ手は伸ばされている。ああ、アッシリア、私の怒りの持ち。私の憤りの杖は彼らの手にある。私はこれを神を敬わない国に送り、私が激しく怒る民を襲えと、これに命じる。物をぶんどらせ、獲物を奪わせ、道端の 泥のようにこれを踏みにじらせる。しかし彼自身はそうとは思わず、彼の心もそうは考えない。彼の心にあるのは滅ぼすこと、少なからぬ国々を立ち滅ぼすことだ。というのは彼がこう思っているからだ。私の高官たちは皆王ではないか。狩るのもカルケミシュのよう、ハマテもアルパデのようではないか。サマリアもダマスコのようではないか。エルサレム、サマリアに勝る刻んだ像を持つ偽りの神々の王国を私が手に入れたように、私はサマリアとその偽りの神々にしたように、エルサレムとその多くの偶像にも同じようにしないだろうかと。主はシオンの山エルサレムでご自分のすべての技を成し遂げるとき、アッシリアの王の思い上がった心の果実、その高ぶる目の輝きを罰せられる。それは彼がこう言ったからである。私は自分の手の力でやった。私の知恵でやった。私は賢いからだ。私が小国の民の境を取り払い、彼らの蓄えを奪い、全能者のように住民を貶めた。私の手は小国の民の財宝を巣のようにつかみ、私は見捨てられた卵を集めるように地のすべてのものを集めたが、翼をはためかす者も、口を大きく開ける者も、泣く者もいなかった。斧はそれを使って切る人に向かって高ぶることができるだろうか。ノコギリはそれを引く人に向かっておごることができるだろうか。それは鞭がそれを振り上げる人を動かし、知恵が木ではない人間を持ち上がるようなものではないか。それゆえ万軍の主はその最も声を歌った者たちをやつれさせ、その栄光のもとで炎が燃え上がる。イスラエルの光は火となり、その聖なる方は炎となる。燃え上がってその踊ろと茨を一日のうちになめ尽くす。主はその美しい林も果樹園も、また魂も体も滅ぼし尽くし、それは病人が痩せ衰える時のようになる。その林の木の残りは数えるほどになり、子供でもそれらを書き留められる。その日になるとイスラエルの残りの者、ヤコブの家の逃れの者はもう二度と自分を打つ者に頼らず、イスラエルの聖なる方、主に真実をもって頼る。残り者、 ヤコブの残りのものは力ある神に立ち返る。たとえあなたの民イスラエルが海の砂のようであっても、その中の残りのものだけが帰ってくる。壊滅は定められ、義があふれようとしている。すでに定められた全滅を万軍の神、主は全地のただ中で起こそうとしておられる。それゆえ万軍の神、主はこう言われる。シオンに住む私の民よ、アッシリアを恐れるな。彼が鞭であなたを打ち、エジプトがしたように使う知恵をあなたに振り上げても、もうほんの少しで私の憤りは終わり、私の怒りは彼らを滅ぼしてしまうから。オレブの岩でミディアンを撃った時のように、万軍の主が彼に鞭を振り上げる。知恵を海にかざしてエジプトにしたようにそれをあげる。その日になると彼の重荷はあなたの肩から、彼のくびきはあなたの首から除かれる。くびきは脂肪のゆえに外される。彼はあやてにつき、ミグロンを過ぎ、ミクマスに荷を置く。彼らは峠を過ぎ、ゲバで野営する。ラマはおののき、サウルのギブアは逃げる。娘ガリムよ、甲高く叫べ、よく聞け。来者よ、哀れなあなとて。マデメナは逃げ去り、ゲビムの住民は避難する。その日のうちに彼はノブで立ちとどまり、娘シオンの山エルサレムの丘に向かって手を振り上げる。見よ、万軍の主が恐ろしい勢いで枝を切り払われる。竹の高いものは切り倒され、そびえたものは低くなる。主は林の茂みを鉄の斧で切り倒し、レバノンは力強い方によって倒される。アメン. 네, 감사합니다. 오늘도 일본어 성경이 많이 어려웠네요. 네, 함께 해주신 여러분 감사합니다.